A dusty wind swept across the barren plains, carrying with it the echoes of boots and broken dreams. You ever wonder, the narrator's voice rose, low and steady, drawing the listener in as if leaning close by the campfire, how one single moment, one chance encounter, can turn a life upside down. Well, this is the story of a poor man, a father with nothing left but the will to keep going, who thought he had lost his place in this world. Until he stumbled across a woman and her child, begging for a drop of milk. What he discovered that day didn't just save them, it changed his life forever. Stay with me, because once you step into this story, you'll want to ride it all the way to the end. He was called Samuel by most folks, though in town they whispered, "Poor Sam," because his pockets had nothing but dust and his coat was more holes than cloth. He had once worked the railroads, hammering steel under the blistering sun, but a bad accident left his back crooked and his savings drained. His wife had died 2 winters before, fever taking her quick, and since then Sam drifted between odd jobs, sometimes sleeping in barns, sometimes under the stars. He still carried in his coat a small wooden horse he had carved for his son before the boy passed, too. That little toy was all he had left of family, and it weighed heavier on his heart than any sack of stones. One late afternoon, Sam trudged down a dirt road leading into a small western town. The sun burned low, painting the sky red like spilled whiskey. He was thinking only of finding cheap bread and maybe a place to rest when he heard the faintest cry, thin and trembling, like a bird in the cold. He followed it around the corner of an old general store and froze. There, sitting against the wall, was a woman clutching a bundle of rags to her chest. Her face was drawn, lips cracked, eyes hollow. And in those rags was a baby, its little hands pawing weakly, lips searching for milk that wasn't there. The woman looked up at him with shame and desperation. "Sir," she whispered, voice breaking, "please, just a drop of milk. My baby hasn't eaten in 2 days." Sam felt the air leave his lungs. He had no money to spare, not even for himself. But that cry, it cut through him like a knife. He stepped into the store, bartered his pocketknife for a small bottle of milk, and returned, kneeling down as he placed it in the woman's hands. She wept silently as she fed the child, and Sam, for the first time in years, felt something stir inside him, something warm, almost forgotten. The woman's name was Clara. She told him her husband had been a ranch hand who never came back from a cattle drive gone wrong. Left alone, she had wandered from town to town, begging, but with each day her strength waned. Sam listened, heavy-hearted. He knew what it was to lose, to wander, to be invisible to the world. And in that moment, though he had little, he made a choice, he would not walk away. Over the next days, Sam worked harder than his back could bear, taking whatever jobs came his way, shoveling stables, hauling sacks of grain, chopping wood, anything to bring food for Clara and her baby. At night, he would sit by the fire outside the barn they'd been given to sleep in, staring at the stars, wondering why fate had put them in his path. Slowly, Clara began to smile again. The baby, Samuel Jr. she called him, though he wasn't Sam's blood, grew stronger with each passing day. Yet, not all hearts in town were kind. Some folks muttered about beggars and strays, and one evening, when Sam returned from a long day's work, he found Clara weeping again. A local landowner, a man with cold eyes and a cruel smirk, had told her she'd never last here, that she was better off leaving before the winter. Rage boiled in Sam's chest, the kind he hadn't felt since burying his wife and boy. But instead of lashing out, he stood taller. He promised Clara that as long as he breathed, she and the baby would not be cast aside again. That promise would be tested soon enough. Weeks later, Sam heard about a cattle drive needing men. Dangerous work, but it paid enough to give Clara and the child a real home. His back ached just thinking of it, but he signed up. The drive was brutal, days under the sun, nights fending off wolves and rustlers, but Sam pushed himself past the breaking point. He thought of Clara's tired smile, of the baby's tiny hands gripping his finger, and he pressed on. When the drive was done, Sam returned not with riches, but enough coin to rent a small cabin at the edge of town. Clara's eyes filled with tears when he handed her the key, and for the first time in years, Sam felt like more than just poor Sam. He was a man with a family again. And here's what he discovered, something he would carry with him until his dying breath. That sometimes the greatest wealth a man can find is not gold, not land, not cattle, but the chance to give love where it's needed most. Sam thought he had nothing left in this world, but by sharing the little he had, he gained back everything he had lost: purpose, belonging, and the kind of family no amount of misfortune could ever take away. So when folks in town whispered, "Poor Sam," after that, he'd smile to himself. Because he knew better. He wasn't poor anymore. He was the richest man alive. And that, my friends, is how one man, broken by loss, found hope again, through a mother, a baby, and a bottle of milk. Stick that in your heart, and let it remind you, even in the harshest deserts of life, kindness can bloom like spring rain.